What's up, y'all? It's L Complex on YouTube, L underscore Complex and underscore Libra Love 504 underscore on TikTok. And today, it is today because it's after midnight. I want to share with y'all my experience as being a stud. Nobody else's, mine. I must start back to childhood because everything starts at childhood. I never felt in alignment with my femininity. Um, Biologically born a girl, knew I was a girl, but I just never felt um, I couldn't identify with it. And I used to run around the house, no shirt on, used to take the bar soap and lad it up on my face and use a bobby pin and act like I was shaving, you know. And I just never connected with completely with the feminine side. You know, when I was younger, I tried to have a boyfriend because, I felt like that's what you're supposed to do. Um, you that's what girls do. Girls have boyfriends, boyfriends have girlfriends. But I always knew that I liked girls, right? And I told my mama when I was 8 years old, and she was like, you just like being around pretty people. But as I got older and I was able to start buying my own clothes, um, kind of doing what I wanted with my hair, I would say by the end of high school, it was pretty much solidified on whether or not I was going to be a femme or a stud, right? And I just couldn't see nobody dominating me like that, putting my legs up in the air against the bed, against the headboard. I just couldn't see that happening. And I just had this natural way in me to lead, you know, take care of everything, protect and make sure that everything is okay. And that exists in women as well that are not lesbian. So it's not just a trait that's specific to men, although it is common, and mainly common in men is not a trait that's specific to them. So um, I I knew I wanted by the end of high school. I knew I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not a feminine woman. I'm not this doesn't wearing women's clothing was just a ick to me. It was like no, you know, um, even down to the underwear. Like I felt caged up down there, and so I came up during a time where it wasn't they wasn't too fond of it. They were still trying to understand what a stud was, and they were still calling us dykes. They were still calling us, bull daggers and stuff like that. And this was the early 2000s, and being a stud in the South, no less. My experience from men, how they would interact with me is they would. I got a lot of dirty looks. Like they wanted to fight me. Like I had a lot of looks like that. They wouldn't say anything. They would just look at me like they wanted to fight me. Um, I've had men that would intentionally call me baby, sweetheart, and not as like a term of endearment, because in the South we have a lot of term of endearment. But like to try to intentionally put me into a place of being feminine and submissive by how they would address me. I've had men that would not acknowledge me when I walked into the room because they didn't like, the masculinity that they saw on a woman, right? And by the way, you could be a feminine woman with masculine energy, but because they didn't like the package, there were times where I would enter a room, I would speak, they would not speak back. I would say something and they would talk over me, or it's like I didn't exist, like I wasn't there. And you just learn how to play around it. You learn how to maneuver around it. And that's what I had to do. And it wasn't like on social settings, it was job related. I was fired because I was a lesbian. I couldn't prove it, but I felt greatly that that's what his issue was with me. And it was in Texas, no less, when I moved to Texas. Which is crazy because Texas has a large LGBTQ plus population, but it's very machismo, So, what else do I want to mention? That was part of my experience with how men will respond to me. I've had men tell me straight up they're gonna beat my ass. I'll beat you. You want to be a man? I'll beat you like a man. And I say, oh, that's pretty arrogant to think that you could beat any man. And I got told that on the job setting because I used to work in corrections, so I got told that by inmates. Whatever. It was mainly pertaining, to work. Now, those looks that I would get were from, just me going about my everyday business, just being me, just being myself, just, not bothering anybody, just existing in the world. I have not, from my experience, I noticed that in order to kind of function a little bit, I had to fem it up to some degree. And what I mean by that is not go and put on dress, heels, makeup, and wigs and all of that, or grow my hair back down to my shoulders where it was. But, I had to soften my voice because I noticed that would make men uncomfortable. And I naturally, there are women that have naturally heavy voices anyway. But I would have to soften mine, which was uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable. I would have to soften my movements. And what I mean by that is I would pose in a way that was still strong but showed some signs of femininity. Yeah. So I would make those small adjustments. And I noticed that when I made those adjustments, I had a completely different interaction and a completely different response from men. they stopped ignoring what it was I had to say and they started listening. Um, I noticed I made myself small several times. So instead of sitting with my legs stretched out and crossed and my arms crossed or whatever like that, I'm sitting up straight, you know, arms folded, legs tucked in with feet interlocked. You know, I had to soften my movements, and I noticed that there are some features about me that are just you know they're going to be feminine, and there's nothing I can do about that. Like my nails, they grow long, and I don't have a problem with that at all. I love it. They naturally, like, people wish they could have, you know, their nails grow out the way mine do. Um, it's just some things about me that I'm gonna have because I am a woman, and I noticed they would look at me more like from head to toe, like they were trying to assess what was going on over here. And I started getting more cooperation at work than I was getting before. It's not easy for, you know, masculine lesbians. And I don't want to say mask presenting because apparently that means something all completely different. That means mask presenting means you dress masculine, but you are soft with feminine energy. From what I gathered, on this thing we call the World Wide Web. Um, but I noticed, like, so stud, butch, mask, or whatever, we do not have it easy like feminine women do. And it's not to downplay the struggles that feminine women go through in the workplace. So let me clear that up before everybody get their undergarments in a bunch. But a woman, especially a woman that knows she's attractive, a woman that knows she's pretty, she knows that she can wield that to her advantage, especially on a job. Men are so easy. She knows that if she gives a smirk, a smile, if she laughs, if she dolls herself up, adorns herself from head to toe, the men are going to look and they're naturally are going to want to do things for her because they're anticipating something in return. So she being a feminine woman, doesn't have to work as hard as a masculine lesbian would. She doesn't have the shit assignments at work. She gets comfortable, laid out positions. Just day-to-day errands, like if something's going on with her car, she's more likely to get help if she's stranded on the road than a masculine lesbian would. Any types of services that she needs, like say auto repair, she may be able to work herself into a deal and discounts where a masculine lesbian might walk in and they may get charged almost a ridiculous amount for a simple repair, or they may not be acknowledged as soon as they walk in, or they may be ignored. it's a different energy when you walk into the room. And for me, all I ever wanted was just mutual, respect, you know, and instead of anger that I am the way that I am, it's because you can't fuck me. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why a lot of men were mad because you cannot have sex with me. And not only that, I'm probably going to end up with a woman that you want. Or your woman may take interest in, having a lesbian interaction if you make her mad, whatever. But yeah, I always had to, keep myself in a position to where if something happened, I didn't have to rely on anybody to come and rescue me as far as somebody that wasn't in my family, And a lot of studs out here, are switching up so easy because they want to be treated like a princess. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But if you want to be treated like a princess, go ahead and put them panties and them heels on, And I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. As far as relationships, well, let me go back to the mutual respect part. The disrespect that men give masculine lesbians is on a whole different level. I haven't had a man directly yet disrespect me to my face in regards to trying to holler at or trying to, flirt with somebody that I'm obviously with. But I have had them do it behind my back, and I've had them take issue with me because they wanted who I had, but they would try to make the issue about something else. No, I did have somebody disrespect me like that, and he tried to be smooth about it, and that was just to see what I was gonna do. It was to see if I was gonna react, and I said to myself, I was looking at who I was dating at the time and be like, look, tell him about himself because I know the type of person that I am. I'm logical and I'm cautious, but I'm not scary. But I don't want to be disrespected either. So I was telling her, like, look, you need to shut that shit he doing. You need to tell him to cut it out because if I get involved in it, it won't be good. And it's the fact that if I were a biological male, he would not have tried me like that. He wouldn't have tried me like that. It wasn't cool for the ones that did it behind my back, but that showed me that they at least had enough respect for me as a person. Maybe might have even considered my feelings a little bit to not do that in front of my face. But that is a big thing with men and masculine lesbians. They will disrespect you and flirt with your woman. They will do things to masculine lesbians that they wouldn't do to a man. You know, the bro code. And I guess the bro code doesn't apply because I'm not a biological bro. You know? But yeah, there are things that they wouldn't do to another man. Just out of respect, just out of, bro code, And you can dislike, you cannot agree with how I am, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but respect me as a person, as a human being, and that's the problem, I feel too, is that we are not seen as even human for a lot of them. But let me say I want to go try dick tomorrow, get on live and, say I want to, have my first rodeo with a man, my value will all of a sudden go up, and I can wield whatever it is that I want, including respect, because they want some vagina, that hasn't had many visitors or any visitors at all, and but that's men, period, though. Most men only tend to put value on women if she land on her back. Anyway. As far as relationships, I have always been the sole provider, material wise, and you gotta ask yourself, like, man, doesn't that get exhausting? Some people might make comments saying, oh, you want to be a man, you gotta do what a man does, and welcome to the life of a man, da 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 da. Shut up. What's exhausting is doing it for the wrong person. I don't mind taking care of who I'm with and making sure things are okay. But what gets exhausting is constantly or consistently a few times enough doing it for the wrong woman that takes advantage, that takes what you provide and provides it for someone else that doesn't respect you, or respects you to your face but not behind your back. That's what gets exhausting. What else have I experienced being a masculine lesbian, being a stud? My experience as a stud. I've had a lot of closeted bisexual girlfriends. And they were closeted to me because I didn't know. A lot of my relationships, I've only had one woman that was actually a lesbian. At first, it was, everybody has boyfriends or has had a boyfriend as a woman. I've had boyfriends, so that's not strange, some women were in relationships long enough to have children. That's not strange either, because a lot of them will try to be straight to appease their family because they haven't found a partner that can make sure that they're okay when their family disowns them. So they end up, in these relationships with men that they really don't want to be in, and they have children, right? So I didn't think anything, strange about that, but only later on down the line, only one of my girlfriends had a child, you know, and that was my last relationship from uh, 4 years ago. But I didn't think that they were bisexual because at first they weren't doing anything to make me think otherwise. They were very, into me, and they put on a very good show. And there were a lot of things that I noticed that were changing. And those things would happen to change when a man was around. And so I'm like, okay, I'm probably being cheated on, and she's probably cheating on me with a man. Uh, three of my relationships were four of my relationships were that way. And actually, I want to change what I said earlier. There were two women that I've dated that were actual lesbians. Um, the rest were not. And but and that's why bisexual women have such a bad rep in our community, because they're not honest about it. I don't have a problem dating a bisexual woman as long as she's honest about her preference, and as long as she is not a cheater. When you're with me, you're with me. When you're with a man, you're with a man and only him. And even if we're in the talking stage and she's talking to somebody else, and she happened to meet me, that all parties know, what's going on. Like, hey, I'm not dating anybody exclusively. I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to a woman, and hey, I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to a man. That line of communication needs to be open. And I've also had there are a lot of similarities with being a stud to that have challenges that men face. One of the things is, like, in a heterosexual community, women don't typically want or go for short men, and it's becoming the same in our community. A lot of women, they want somebody 5'7", 5'8", or taller. Um, they want them athletically built. They want them, look a certain way, have their hairstyle a certain way. Um, dress really nice. In the fashion, stuff like that. Have money. They want them tall, with money, and good looks. So, I've gotten overlooked a lot, as far as the type of woman that I like, that I've tried to approach. And I also feel like, like I'm looking a little scruffy right now. Need a haircut. I don't know what's going on with my skin, but it's breaking out. It's inflamed. Um, it's not, I don't believe in spending thousands of dollars on a couple of outfits just to look like I'm off a runway, you know, unless it's something I really like. So I typically don't dress how most studs dress, and I also don't dress as hard, you know. And what I mean by that is, I wear clothing where you can tell that I'm a woman. You know, it's not nothing tight. It's just I don't. I don't wear overly. I don't wear oversized clothing. You know, I wear clothing that fits. Well, you know, you can look at my shirt and be like, oh, okay, I see breasts there. You know,